When I was going around this morning, giving the animals feed and taking a look at them, I can definitely tell that their manure has loosened up. Their manure is turning slightly green, and they are eating less feed. These animals are eating less feed. I can tell they are eating slower, and they are just, they are eating substantially slower, and their feed or their manure is loosening up. And their manure may also be loosening up because the grass has a lot of moisture in it. Okay, that's also another thing that will loosen up the manure of the animals when the grass that they are eating has a lot of moisture in it. And I can tell that the manure is turning slightly green. With everything going on, there are times when my feed costs go to effectively zero. Okay, not absolute zero, but there are months where I don't spend any money on fertilizer or grain. And the reason is because when I buy grain, I buy it in bulk. I buy it by multiple tons at a time. I don't buy it in small quantities, and I don't buy it in great large quantities either. I take a look at it and I determine how much grain do I need to feed my animals for about a month, 1 to 3 months, and then I purchase that amount. And so there are times like right now, where I have plenty of grass and I have grain in storage. And once these animals start eating about 90% of their diet in grass, I will be able to tell that they are eating a majority of their diet in grass simply because of their manure quality. And, they will actually start eating less feed. They will start eating less feed. It's like living at a buffet, right? If you're living at a buffet, chances are you're not just going to wait for one dish, right? You're going to eat, everything at that buffet. So, and by the time they're eating everything at that, and the whole thing about grass is that grass is a wonderful cattle feed, okay? Fresh grass, fresh vegetating grass that has been fertilized properly, right? That is a very good quality cattle feed. The animals love eating grass. And eating grass actually calms your animal too. It calms your animal, and the animals love eating grass when it's a good quality, right? When it's a good quality, early middle vegetation type grass. The animals love eating that stuff. It's not like they're eating something that they don't want to eat. And so here very soon, my feed costs will go to zero, not absolute zero. It will go to zero simply because I will have a lot of grass on the field and I will have grain in storage, so I won't need to buy anything. I won't need to buy any more grain, okay? Maybe for an entire month. And I may, whatever. I may buy, I may buy $500 worth of fertilizer. I may buy $550 worth of fertilizer and just fertilize that one portion of the field over there where the cattle love to go and eat grass. And I may, fertilize the field, the preconditioning facility as well. I'll have to take a look. And but that, it's not gonna, and even if I do that, this month, let's say I fertilize both fields and it costs me $800. Even if I fertilize both of the fields this month, chances are, I got maybe about 5, 6, 7 tonnages. I've got maybe about 4 or 5 tonnages of grain sitting at the preconditioning facility. And, chances are I'm not going to be, even if I have to, eventually what will happen is that there will be a month or two where my grain or where my feed costs effectively go to zero. Not absolute zero, but the reason that my feed costs will go to zero is because there won't be any need for me to buy any more grain, and there won't be any need for me to fertilize any more grass. All right, I'll just work with what I got for a little bit, and it's not like I'm struggling, right? The animals will have plenty to eat, and there's just no reason for me to buy anything else at that point. And when that happens, I will buy herbicide. That's the big idea, is I will buy herbicide for the other field. And yeah, I'll be buying herbicide for the other field. And here in about maybe I got a little bit of a drizzle coming in, just a little bit of a drizzle. Here in about maybe 3 weeks, I will be liquidating animals when I am ready to, when the animals that are at the preconditioning facility have been vaccinated, when the animals have gotten their vaccination shots and they are ready to go. That is when I will liquidate these the 6 animals from here, and I will take that money and I will I will take that money and either I may actually use a couple of $1,000s from that money to herbicide the 73-acre field. I may go ahead and do that. But it really depends. I'll have to take a look at the weather conditions. The whole thing about herbicide is like, you gotta, if you're gonna herbicide a field, there are certain conditions that need to be met, right? Depending on the type of herbicide you're using, you should read the label. The grass needs to be so and so tall. The weeds need to be, whatever, right? And so I'll take a look at it, and I may be herbiciding my field by the 73-acre field by the end of this month. And I'll be liquidating my cattle when I'm ready to reinvest capital, and I'll be ready to reinvest capital once the animals at the preconditioning facility have been vaccinated. And I may even be willing to bring in new animals when the animals at the preconditioning facility have just had their first shot. I may be willing to, because the animals that are at the preconditioning facility right now, they're all healthy. Okay. They're all healthy. I don't have any cattle I don't have any calves that I'm worried about. All the animals are healthy. If I give them one shot of vaccinations and then let that vaccination leave them for about a week, right? Because when you give the animals the vaccination, especially if you're giving them a gram-negative bacteria vaccination, it's you can tell that the animals don't feel very good for about a week. You can tell they kind of mope around, and they just feel like they just look like they're not doing very good for about a week. So once that week has passed, I may be willing to bring in new animals after the animals have had one shot. I'll have to take a look. But then again, it's like if I sell 6 animals, there's a very real possibility that I end up with enough money to buy like 14 animals and pay for the load of grain. I may be able to buy 12 or 14 animals and pay for the load of grain. So I'll have to see. I'll have to take a look and see what am I gonna do. Yeah, but I'll be liquidating animals when I'm ready to reinvest the capital. Here by about March, by about April, I was actually taking a look at this. But by about March or April, I may be liquidating 12 or 14 cattle a month and not 10. I was, thinking about this. I may actually be liquidating 12 or 14 cattle a month and not 10. And so my earnings may be about 30% higher. But then again, the cattle market may go down, and I'm not, whatever. I'm not concerned about the money, right? The whole idea of the investment is that it's a good investment. I would reasonably anticipate that cattle are going to be worth something from now until effectively, the duration of my entire life. Okay, granted that we don't enter like some nuclear apocalypse, or granted that we don't enter some, like the universe doesn't get absorbed into a black hole. Granted like the sun doesn't explode, or we get hit by a meteor or something like that. Granted that something like that does not happen, right? I would reasonably anticipate that cattle will be worth something effectively for the entire duration of my life, okay? And chances are that the value of the animal will actually go up. The price of beef will probably be higher in 50 years than it is today. It probably will be. But it doesn't matter to me, simply because if the animals are worth money and we're talking about a commodity asset, then what does it matter? If the animals are worth less money but I have more animals, if I'm focused on growing my herd size, if I'm focused on growing my business and growing the size of my herd, then it doesn't really matter what the animals are worth, because eventually, right, as long, and I don't think the price of cattle will ever go to zero, okay? And so granted that, that condition is met, granted that the cattle market does not go to zero, which I don't think it will, right? It doesn't matter if the price of cattle go to half. If I double the size of my herd, then I still make the same amount of money, right? There are times when effectively my cost of gain will be $0. There are times when my cost of gain, there's a month or two out of every year, sometimes 2 or 3 months, depends on how much rain I get and how much grass I accumulate. There are roughly 2 or 3 months out of the year where I don't spend any money on feed at all. And I'm not saying it's absolute zero. What I'm talking about is I've already bought the grain and I've already fertilized the grass, and I don't need to buy any more grain and I don't need to fertilize any more grass. So I might as well just let the animals eat what I got, right? And it's not like I'm putting the animals on a struggle bus, right? I'm not putting the animals, in some difficult situation by doing this. I just don't need to buy anything else. So why would I, right? And here by about early next year, the big idea is to just keep reinvesting the money into my business. The whole idea of making good choices, and how I see the idea of making good choices is that I don't believe in altruistic good. Okay, I don't believe in altruistic good. And the reason that I do not believe in altruistic good is because, and the whole idea of like making good choices, and the reason that I don't believe in altruistic good is because the average person is not a saint. All right, average person is not a saint. Average person is more or less a massive pile of problems. A lot of people are. Okay, chances are you're not making your choices in life. A lot of people are not making choices in life to make the best good choice that they can. A lot of people are not. A lot of people have different motives, right? They're making this choice because they think they believe that they fell out of heaven at 7. They're making this choice because whatever, they got a bunch of opinions, and now they're going to go on a magical journey. A lot of people are not making the best good choice that they can at all times. They're not using their reason to make the best good choice that they can. All right, a lot of people throwing Hail Marys into the middle of nowhere. I fell out of heaven at 7. Chances are if you're failing, you're not failing because you're a good person. That's why I don't believe in altruistic good. I do believe in making good choices. And the whole thing about making good choices and using money as an example of this is like a lot of people, if you actually give them money, you will ruin their life. You will, all right? And that's one realistic example of what I use in terms of a realistic example of this, is that there are a lot of people. It's like if you gave a gambling addict money, you could end up ruining their life. You could legitimately ruin their life. I mean, next thing you know, they're $500,000 in debt at the casino, right? If you give a crackhead money, next thing you know, they've overdosed and they died, right? If you give, and this is the idea of making a good choice. And this is something that I believe, and I'm not whatever about it. I'm not bragging about it. I'm not whatever, but where I work, there are a lot of crackheads, all right? A lot of crackheads. And I don't give them money. But I'll give them a honey bun, and I'll give them a bottle of water, or I'll give them a bottle of whatever, a bottle of Sprite. I don't give anybody money. I don't give these crackheads money. And that's one way I think that I can demonstrate what I'm talking about, making good choices. All right, giving these people money, they'll go around, they'll beg for money, and give me money, and they'll steal money and things, and they'll beg for money, and I don't ever give a crackhead money, because if I gave that crackhead money, it could ruin his life. But I will give him a piece of bread and something to drink. All right, I will do that. That's what I mean by making good choices. All right, if I don't believe in altruistic good. A lot of people, if you legitimately believe in altruistic good, like if you think that you can save an idiot from themselves, that's effectively what I mean by altruistic good. All right, and I'm not talking about a lot of times these crackheads, when they're a crackhead, I mean, it's not like they're they're not whatever, I'm not calling whatever, because a legitimate addiction is something that's different, right? I mean, sometimes you take a look at these people, and it's like they were born in a crack house, right? And it's like that's very rough, and but and it's whatever it may be, okay, and so yeah, I mean, but I don't believe in altruistic good. There are malicious people. There are genuinely malicious people. All right, that's something completely different. But I'm not. I don't believe in altruistic good. Okay, if I could go around and get every crackhead to stop doing crack, then I would do that. All right, and that's the whole idea of also, if giving away every dollar that I ever made helped people, then I would give away every dollar that I ever made. But giving money, there are times, there are the whole idea of the free pie, right? There are people who will, if they figure out that they can get some free pie and that they don't have to work, they will sit there and they will wait for free pie their entire life, and they won't be useful to anybody. All right, and then is that fair to the people that are making the pie? Why would the people that are making the pie want, make any more pie if they're having to pay for, the pie, and they just have to give it all away for free? And then now you got a bunch of bums sitting around waiting for free pie, right? I mean, what's that going to do for the world, right? And so, you got to try. If you don't try, I mean, you're effectively one step above a thief. All right, the people who don't try, I mean, if you want to, think about this in a certain way, you're effectively just a little bit better than a thief. If you're a person who doesn't try, if you're not putting in any effort, if you're not trying to do better, right? If you're not even attempting to do better, right? Then, then you're effectively just a little bit better than a thief. All right. And, the whole thing about social media and stuff like this, it's like, why not go and watch people like Warren Buffett, right? That's my thing. It's like when it comes to investing money, when it comes to, things like this, why not watch people who are doing extremely well, right? Why not, watch people who are doing extremely well? You can go and watch Warren Buffett. You can go and watch Charlie Munger. Right, I mean, Warren Buffett is one of my favorite people to listen to when it comes to speaking about investments. All right, there are a lot of people who talk about investments. There are a lot of people, it's like even daily movement in the market. There are people who talk about that. But when it comes to legitimately talking about investments, I actually like listening to Warren Buffett the most. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I think that they are the most interesting investment people that I have found. Okay. And, when I take a look at my balance sheet is not taking off like a commercial airliner, okay? This is something that's happening, and it's happening very rapidly, is that my balance sheet is not taking off like a commercial airliner. My balance sheet is taking off like some state-of-the-art vertical takeoff jet, reusable rocket type situation. The amount of money that I'm making is increasing so drastically. But here's the thing. I don't know how long I will be able to maintain this rate of growth. Because if I maintained this rate of growth, I would be at about $1 million a year by about February. I would be at about $1 million. I would be about $1 million a year by April, and then I would be effectively $10 million a year by December. And I don't know if I'll be able to do that. I told myself I am going to try. I will try, and I will put in my best effort. I have a couple of fail safes that can be triggered when necessary. I do have a couple of fail safes that I can trigger. I can even start holding back heifers, right? I spoke about the idea of going to the cow-calf business. If I, take a look at my balance sheet and I'm making just way too much money, I can hold back some heifers. If the feeder cattle market is doing good, then I could even raise my animals to a higher weight. I may even consider going to the fed cattle business, things like that. I have different fail safes that I can that will trigger on their own when necessary. I can even start pulling the cash out of my business and investing with straight leverage. Because, here's the thing. Let's say that I have 140 animals, right? Let's say that I have 140 animals and I'm selling 14 on a monthly basis. If I sell 14 out of 140, that leaves me with 126, right? And 126 will effectively produce me enough money to, purchase about 25 cattle. So for me to leverage again, and let's say that my balance sheet is effectively at an 80% leverage, right? And I ran my business the way that I run my business. So I have 126 cattle. I sold 14. When I sold my 14, let's say I made enough money to buy 2 loads of grain and a couple tonnages of fertilizer. And so I sold my 14. I made enough money to buy 30. I also made enough money to buy 2 loads of grain and 2 tonnages of fertilizer, okay? Or whatever, 28. I sold 14 and bought 28, and I made enough money to buy 2 loads of grain and 2 tonnages of fertilizer, whatever it may be. So 28. and my balance sheet, let's say even just 25 to make the numbers easy and to just give it a low ball estimate. So I made enough money to buy 25 by just selling my 14, and I bought everything else that I needed, right? So now I have 25 animals, and then I take a look at my balance sheet and I say I still have 126 animals left on my balance sheet, and all these animals have been stabilized. All these animals have been stabilized. I haven't bought any animals in the last month. All the animals that I got, they're stabilized. And so I'm going to leverage against the unrealized gain on my balance sheet, because if I don't, then my debt to equity ratio starts to collapse. So I go and I buy, I take my 25. I take the 25 animals, and out of those 25 animals, or 28 animals, let's do whatever, 25, 11 of them are straight profit, right? 11 of them are straight profit. And so, so now it's like I really only took a loan for 14 more, right? And if I took a loan for 14 animals and I have 140 animals, well, now I would technically have, 100 and whatever, 100 and, so 140 minus 14 would be 26, plus 50 would be would be about 200 animals, right? It would be about 175 animals. So if I have 175 animals and I only took a loan for 14 animals, it's not going to even, it's going to be like throwing a pebble at the glass castle, or not at the glass castle. My balance sheet is called the diamond castle, right? It would be like throwing a pebble at the diamond castle. It's not going to do anything. It's not even going to make a mark. All right. And the whole thing about me, leveraging, it would effectively be like throwing a pebble at the diamond castle. If I have 175 animals and I took a loan, a lot of people, their balance sheets are glass castles. A majority of people, their balance sheets are glass castles. My balance sheet is a diamond castle. All right, I'm serious about this. I'm not lying about this. I legitimately have one of the best financials. I'm not talking about like in terms of like because I've always said that in terms of legitimate like wealth disparity, the largest amount of disparity actually happens at the top end of the economy. All right, the largest amount of disparity actually happens at the top end. I managed to, get myself into near the very top, but just because I'm near the very top does not mean that I'm anywhere near the top. All right, two completely separate things. I managed to effectively put myself in a situation where I do very well for myself, and I'm not ever concerned about money. And about 93% of the money that I make is just effectively just, money that I can do whatever I would like to do with it. And my whole thing is, when I think about doing things, I make the best good choice that I can. If I took my money and I put myself in a mini mansion, in a McMansion, and I bought myself a Lamborghini, and what would that do for anybody, right? It's not going to do anything for anybody. And at the end of the day, I'm the one with the money. I can do whatever I want. It's my money. I made it. What am I going to do about it? Stop running cattle? Is that the idea? You want me to stop running cattle? You want me to buy less cattle? Go kill yourself. I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want me to say. A lot of people, their balance sheets are glass castles, and you're going to see this. But my balance sheet is a diamond castle, and you will, understand this. I hope you understand this, because if you legitimately look at my balance sheet, and chances are you don't even know what you're looking at. Most people don't. All right, and my whole thing about losing money is that a majority of people end up losing money because they're wrong. Our money's not an opinion. All right, either you're doing very well or you're not. All right, it just is what it is. Or you're barely making enough to get by, which is another way of saying you're not doing very well. Okay, you really need to be in a situation where you're looking to do better for yourself effectively all the time. Okay, and make good choices. Don't sell your soul to the devil for money, etc., etc. Okay, but a lot of people end up losing money because they're wrong. Right, this is something I spoke about. You effectively go 180 degrees in the wrong direction. If you have a bunch of opinions and you have no money, that's kind of pathetic. All right, you should go and make some money. All right, you should go and find something that you can do for the world that would positively affect the world, and make some money doing it. okay, and invest your capital into some kind of a reasonable asset, and have the capital make you more money. Okay, you really want to be making money with your money. Okay, because if you take your money and then you just go and you whatever with it, you just make yourself feel better, and you go and you buy yourself a whatever, it's not going to do anything. All right, you really need to develop an understanding of assets and what makes an asset a good asset, and what kind of a return can you make on this asset, and et cetera, et cetera. How can you reasonably gauge it, and et cetera, et cetera. That's that's very important. Because even if you're making enough money to get by right now, it's chances are, if if you're working for money, you're always going to be in a hard spot monetarily. If you're working for if you're working for money, you'll always be in a hard spot financially. Okay, your money should be making you money. That's where you want to be financially. Okay, you don't want to be working for money. Your money should be making you money. All right, and the whole idea of good assets, what makes an asset a good asset. But a lot of people are gonna end up not making money simply because they're wrong. That's going to be what costs the most people the most amount of money. You can take a look right at something and you just go running off in the wrong direction. You can take a look at the S&P 500 and then you can just convince yourself to not buy it. The S&P 500 is not the most wonderful investment, but it is a good investment, and that's having a good investment is much better than not having any investments, or even worse, having bad investments. If the only thing that you have is a house and a car, you're going to lose money for the rest of your life. Nobody cares about your worthless whatever. All right, I've always said the whole thing about family is that you should care about your family, but nobody else does. All right, nobody cares about your kids. Nobody cares about your wife. All right, I guarantee it. You should care about your family, and that's very good, right? I mean, but nobody else is going to care about your family. All right, your whole house and your car, and if you have a house and a car and that's all you have, you're going to lose money forever. All right, you're going to lose money forever. All right, and so but a lot of people end up losing money because they're wrong. A lot of people end up not making money because they're wrong. The S&P 500 is a good investment. It's not a fantastic investment, but it is a good investment, and it is much better to have a good investment than a bad investment or no investment at all. The S&P 500 is just fundamentally a good investment, all right? It pays you a dividend, all right? It's an equitable stake in the, it's a small portion. You're purchasing a small equitable stake in the greatest economy in the world, and et cetera, all right? That's what makes the S&P 500 a good investment. The price is negligible. The price does not matter. All right. The fundamental idea for why the investment is a good investment is it just is what it is. All right. The price is negligible, and so and when I take a look at my balance sheet, I'm serious. My balance sheet is set to take off like some state-of-the-art vertical, launching fighter jet, rocket ship, reusable rocket ship. I'm serious. My balance sheet is going to absolutely go vertical, but I am not certain for how long I can maintain this rate of growth. My rate of growth will be somewhere around 750 and 1,000% annually. That's the amount of rate that I am achieving right now, is about 750 to 1,000%. But I don't know how long I'll be able to maintain this rate of growth. I have, determined that when I liquidate animals, I can, call somebody to hold them for me. When it comes to, doing the like vaccinations, like if I have a sick animal, my animals, they're all very docile. I can just walk up to my animals and they're all very well vaccinated. And so I can just walk up to my animal and just throw a rope around them and then just give them their shot, right? I mean, I can do it while they're eating. It's not that big of a deal. But I'm, whatever. If I have to give all of my animals a vaccination, I'm just going to do that at the vet. I'm going to pay the vet to do that. When it comes to hauling animals, if I have to haul, more than one trailer load of animals at a time, then I'm just going to call somebody to do that. I will start, not doing everything by myself. I will start not doing everything by myself. Up until now, I've effectively done everything by myself just about, until about maybe 6 months ago. I was doing effectively everything by myself. And here within that's something that I reasonably will do. I will pay a vet to give all the animals vaccinations and things like that, deworm them and steer them and things like that. And I will, if I have more than one trailer load of animals that need to go to the vet, or excuse me, to the sale barn, I'll just call the sale barn to have their guy come in and pick up my animal. I'll pay people to do, stuff like that. And, I will be growing my business vertically. I'm serious about this, but that's another way to look at it, is if I would reasonably anticipate that by about March or April of next year, I will be selling about 14 animals a month. And when I sell those 14 animals, I'll effectively have to buy 50. But even if I buy 50, it would be like throwing a pebble at the diamond castle. It's not going to do anything. I mean, I'm serious. This thing, even if I sold 14 and bought 50, it would be like throwing a pebble at the diamond castle. All right, I'm serious about this. I would have to pick up the pace drastically. Now, I don't know how long I can maintain this rate of growth, but I am at least going to put in my best effort to do so. Because if I don't put in my best effort, it's like I've turned my back on God. It's like, why would I, my whole thing about, if I just took all of my money and just sold all my investments and put all that money in the S&P 500 and then just, sat on my hands for the rest of my life, I could still live I could still live, whatever, right? Like, I could still just have the life that I have. Other than my business, my monthly expenses are about $3,500 a month. Like, if I did not run my business, everything that I have other than my business costs me about $3,500 a month. All right. And so it's not, it doesn't take a lot to just, have the bills paid and et cetera, et cetera. And I could easily do that. Even if I just sold everything and just put the money in the S&P 500, I would effectively not worry about money forever. But the reason that I'm not doing that, and the reason that I'm continuing to push myself, is because I believe that I have a moral and a spiritual obligation to do so. The money, I don't care about the money. I don't care what people think about me. You could die tomorrow. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's my money. I'm going to do whatever the heck I feel like with it. If I want to invest 250% of my money into my business and live on $3,500 a month, if I want to do that, then that's what I'll do. What's it to anybody else, right? I'm the one, I'll do whatever the heck I feel like. If I want to buy myself an F-350, when I have 70 animals, if I want to buy myself an F-350, then I'll buy myself an F-350 when I have 70 animals, right? It's, what's it mean to anybody else? It's my money. I can do whatever the heck I feel like, right? And there's a very real possibility, by about March or April of next year, I will actually be liquidating about 14 cattle a month. And if I liquidate 14 cattle a month and I have 140 animals total, if I sold those 14 animals and I bought 50, it would be like throwing a pebble at the diamond castle. I would have to sell 14 and buy like 75 to maintain this level of growth. And I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but I am at least going to put in my best effort to do so. If it turns out that I cannot, if it turns out that I cannot, because then you also have to understand that goes exponential. So if I sold 14 and I bought 75, those 75 animals, and I had 125 before I bought the 75. Now I'm appreciating 200 cattle at a time instead of 140. So if I'm appreciating 200 cattle, right, that means I would have to buy something like 40 cattle, just to leverage against the balance sheet. And I would only leverage against the balance sheet when the assets are stable, right? The next month, once I've gotten the animals, 1 or 2 shots of vaccinations, and I've made sure that the animal's okay, right? Within about a month, usually if the animals are going to get sick from the weaning process, it usually almost happens always between the first 2 to 4 months. So after about a month, the animal is stable. and they've had at least one round of vaccinations, I can get them the second round of vaccinations, later on. I can just keep the animals separated, right? That's the whole idea of building out a larger preconditioning facility. I can just keep the animals separated. They've had the first round of vaccinations. I make sure that they're all okay. Then I can just go and bring home more animals. And if I leverage against just the balance sheet and don't even consider the 14 animals that I'd be selling for the month, I would have to buy 40 animals just to leverage against the balance sheet. And if I sold 14 and I made enough money to buy 25 and 3 loads of grain and 2 tonnages of fertilizer, right? And, if I did that, then I would have to leverage against 11 animals that whatever, right? I'd have to buy like and also out of the 14 animals, a portion of those animals, let's say, 2/3 of those animals, 10 of those animals were my money to begin with. And I took a loan for 4 more, right? And so, I'd have to, so I'd have to take a loan against the 10 animals that I reinvested of my own money and the 11 animals that I made in terms of a profit. So that'd be 21 animals, right? So I would have to sell, I wouldn't be selling 15 and buying 25. I'd be selling 15, for me to maintain this level of growth. It wouldn't be sell 15 and buy 25. It'd be like sell 15 and buy 46 and then leverage for another 40 more to go against the balance sheet. I'd have to buy like 80, 90 animals, all right? And that's what I mean by I don't know if I'll be able to maintain this level of growth for very long, but, this thing is taking off like some state-of-the-art, reusable rocket ship, vertical launching fighter jet.